Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You've reached the No Name Cinema Society, the film review show that dares to dig a little bit deeper. And this is episode 71.3. It's our classic movie discussion. And tonight we're going to go back to the world of James Bond to discuss the 1964 film Goldfinger. Hi, everybody. My name is Jonathan Betzler. I'm one of your hosts here for this evening. And I'm in a new place. Randomly, I'm in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. You've never heard me say that before. And I will be back to New York on Monday. I'm just here for this show tonight, hosting a CMS here. I was invited here to host a classic movie screening. So we're going to do that this week, and then back to New York for Monday's Sound Off. Now, to introduce my co-host for the evening. First, ladies and gentlemen, a debonair ladies' man super spy, Patrick Taylor is here.
Yes, I'm the James Bond guy.
And also with us is if you mess with him, he will mime throwing a killer hat at you. Max Fano is here.
Goldfingers.
See, we did it plural. Anyway, so we got Max and Patrick tonight. Here's the schedule for this, which has been our 71st series of episodes. It started last Thursday with a review of our current feature, and then continued this past Monday with our indie spotlight, The Florida Project. Tonight, of course, is our classic movie discussion, Goldfinger. And this upcoming Monday is our Sound Off. It's the 55th time we do that. We're going to make an announcement. Kelly and I are going to recast some of the films from our 1986 in review that Max was a part of. And Angela and I are both going to count down the top 5 Florida films of all time. So the next question is, who's drinking with me? I'm in Milwaukee here, and apparently they've got a red blend wine here. This is Apothic Crush. So I'm going to have some red blend to blend in with our show. What are you guys drinking? Gurgle. You got to speak out loud. Is it Pacifico for
Pacifico for me? You know.
And that is a ginger beer.
I've got a Reed's ginger beer.
Nice, love it. Cheers to you guys. Very good.
Cheers.
And cheers to the audience. This is the drinking slide that everyone can play along with the society drinking game. Anytime Max does mime or does a funny voice, you drink. Anytime Patrick can't remember the name of a movie or an actor, you drink. Anytime I say all-time, contrivance, contrived, verisimilitude, or diegesis. Hopefully you guys won't get too drunk tonight, but maybe a little buzz. It's time for trivia. And so what I said on the last classic is that we go back to a film series that we've explored 3 other times over the history of the show. And sure enough, tonight we'll be digging in deeper on James Bond for the 4th time. In episode 19.1, we did a review of the film Spectre, a film that Patrick and I saw together. In episode 61.3, we did a review of the classic From Russia with Love. And in episode 19.4, we did a sound off in which I counted down the top 5 Bond films of all time. All right, so that's the trivia. So it's time to dig into Goldfinger a little bit. Are you guys ready for the summary?
Let's dig in.
Let's dig in. Give me a lot of finger using tonight. Max has started a pattern. Okay, so Goldfinger. The British government is stymied by how gold trader Auric Goldfinger manages to transport his gold around the world to sell or buy at various prices, depending on the market. They suspect it's illegal, so they put 007 on the case, who in the process uncovers something far more nefarious going on in the operation of Air Goldfinger. The last couple of years, we've been starting the classic with screening notes, because all these films that we're reviewing are films that I've screened at my classic movie screening series that's been going on since 2011. Max has been to several of those over the years. Patrick refuses to. This particular screening took place on June 28, 2017 in Brooklyn, New York. And overall, the group had a really good time, and we dug deep on this film, which I didn't expect. Not so much on the themes, but the majority of the discussion centered around the craft elements, notably production design and music, and we will dig into that a little bit over the course of our discussion. Now it's time for their opening thoughts. That sort of sets the stage for their opening thoughts, and we will start with Patrick. 1 sentence or less. How'd you feel about Goldfinger?
Thank God action movies have matured.
I guess we will have to dig into that. I expected something a little more positive from Patrick. But Max?
60s campy.
That's more or less in line with Max. I'm not surprised by that. My opening thoughts are it's the best Bond film, period. And which is something that I said on episode 19.4. And I'm not alone. It's generally considered to be the best of the Bond films. And so, to me, what makes it the best Bond film, and this is going to segue into our discussion, there are a lot of things, but easy, quick things to pick out would be the best villain, the best henchman, the best plan by a villain, the best executions, meaning killings, the best single line of dialogue in the series, the best song. So with all those bests, what I consider the best, Where do we begin? Because that covers a lot of things, from performance elements to screenplay elements. But it all kind of falls under direction, so that's where I'll begin. Notably, the first two Bond films were directed by Terrence Young. On a review of the second one, From Russia with Love, which came out the year before, we all agreed that they hadn't quite figured out the formula for Bond yet. They seemed to be close, but still figuring out that balance between humor and action. Enter Guy Hamilton for the third film, and it all comes together. Granted, the trials and tribulations of Terrence Young in the first two films were essential to getting it right. But when Hamilton came in to direct, he was there to steer it over the top. So with that context, I will start with tone and what I consider to be the perfect balance. I think the humor was precise and smartly tongue-in-cheek without calling too much attention to itself. No special close-ups for most of the one-liners. The old woman at the gate didn't feel forced either. But the spy stuff was equally good, with cool, mostly believable devices and plot twists. Where From Russia with Love was a little too heavy on the spy stuff, and Thunderball is a little too silly on the comedy, which is the Bond film that comes immediately after, this film strikes what I consider to be the perfect balance. So before I get into other elements of direction, let's start there. Patrick?
Because I'm in the world of Daniel Craig, it feels like this was so silly. But I do feel like it was silly and well-written and hilarious at times. And I didn't think it took itself too serious. That was a good tone for this era of Bond.
This is what they were trying to accomplish, I think. I understand it's not what a modern audience would gravitate towards. This seems like to be to where they perfected the template. I admit that there's a formula to these films. Like, there is a template, and a lot of the other films follow it, like painting by numbers. This is when I feel like the numbers are established. Max, tone.
Yeah, I think they were open to having fun. They were exploring. I think a lot of what you said is really apropos in terms of them finding their stride or their legs. I thought it was a good tone that they struck.
Now seems like a good time as any to dig into the campy comment from earlier on. So, when you first said it, it felt like it had a negative connotation, but maybe I misinterpreted that. It seems
no, I definitely don't think it's bad. It's not in the way that, like, Austin Powers is campy.
Well, that's a parody, whereas this is
parody,
sort of
right?
Tongue-in-cheek kind of thing.
Right, exactly. I think I think it made it more interesting than if it was like completely a spy espionage thriller about a gold smuggler. One thing you described as subtle, this old woman at the gate, they punctuate certain things, like she's at the gate, and that's one thing. And then she comes out with a Tommy gun or a machine gun.
It was a surprise that she was there at all. And then when she comes out, like, that's the payoff. I don't know if I use the word subtle, but I just felt like it wasn't forced. They didn't like keep cutting back to her or anything like that. Like, it wasn't like something that they were really dragging out. It was just a couple shots.
I didn't expect her with the gun, though. That was an impressive moment. She's not joking around.
Who is joking around is Patrick.
Grandma was fine. It feels campy because it just didn't age well. The sex scenes felt forced. So it's like, that's not going to go very well.
Did it feel forced because there was no, like...
Because there was actual force.
Like, okay, let's go to bed because it was free love time.
No, there was actual force.
Oh, I see. That's what you meant. Staying with direction, let's talk a little bit about the shot design. Because I do feel like the film has some of the more unique shots of the series. The shot in the reflection in the eye in the early sequence. The low-angle shot as Bond kneels over Terry Masterson's body is Odd Job in the gang approach. And, of course, one of the most iconic images in cinema history, the woman dipped in gold.
I thought the intro was the least inspired Bond intro that I've seen, just using...
It wasn't shocking?
No. I think it was poorly executed, just the projection, and it was weird. Because I've just seen how crazy these Bond things get. And I'm like, okay, they weren't necessarily trying. But I thought the shots were great. I thought some of the car chase scenes in the Alps or wherever they were very pretty.
They were indeed the Alps. Max, shot design.
The action sequences were not developed to the extent that later Bond movies brought them to. The camp element was right there from the start. Something I just didn't understand is when he's driving around and he finally crashes because there are the lights in front of him, and it turns out it was a mirror. I feel like Bond would have overcome his reflection.
It's funny because I bought that, but maybe I'm particularly naive. Patrick, you're a tiebreaker.
Yeah, the action was weak in this film. I mean, a guy with a hat chops off people's heads.
That's also kind of iconic, though. It's kind of awesome that he can do that.
Kind of awesome, but kind of like lazy. It's like Batman, like just weird villain stuff.
So I'm going to move on to production design now, because as I mentioned in my screening notes, that group in 2017 marveled at the sets. The map room, for example, for its practical moving parts, pool tables that turn into models, paintings that turn into screens. They essentially made a room that's a transformer, which is kind of impressive from a set design point of view. The Fort Knox interior was another massive, impressive, and perfect set, which I feel like added a lot to the film.
Yes, both of those very impressive. I actually thought that they shot some of it in the actual Fort Knox, at least approaching it.
Yeah, the exteriors were actually Fort Knox.
Okay, well, there you go.
Yeah, that set was dope, and I thought their model work was really cool because you didn't really know what it was when it was coming towards the camera, and I was like, wait, is that computer graphics? I didn't really understand, and then when you found out that Bond can be underneath it, you know, it was a dynamic use of the set, and the room was so vast. And first I was like, oh, what location is this? And then I was like, oh, it's a set, because none of this could not be a real location. That particular room was very, very well done.
Cool. And so the other thing that they talked about at the screening was the music, and I bring it up in direction because it's mostly about the use of the music. Like, if you listen carefully, the majority of the score is variations on the theme song, with only occasional references to Monty Norman's iconic Bond theme. I might even argue that it's the best varied use of a theme song since Casablanca's use of As Time Goes By. It's exciting when you need it to be, but different orchestrations made it romantic in parts and then menacing in others. And that's all collaboration between Guy Hamilton and the great John Barry, the composer. And it's also notable the lack of music in the end sequence inside the Fort Knox vault when he was fighting with Oddjob. It's actually what we say in the clear. And so we've got a composer here with us tonight, so I'm going to go to him first. Patrick.
I thought their use of stabs, of dramatic stabs and drum textures or rhythmic textures was really good. Built tension without doing so much. So it was minimalist in that way. And definitely their reuse of theme. They use the theme in cool ways to drive cool parts of the film. Everyone has stolen from that going forward. So yeah, it was great.
I guess what you're talking about, the moments of horn or trombone or trumpet. Bow, bow, bow.
It was just like the bah, bah, bah. You know, like just the moments, not the theme. The theme is iconic, and that's cool. Like a stab is just really just one note, kind of
yes.
in tension.
It's kind of a bold choice too to do that. You know, like, I'm gonna rely on one or two notes to make this point.
And they kept doing it.
So Max, how did you feel about the idea that they took the Shirley Bassey theme and in different orchestrations they use it to be menacing or romantic or exciting? Like, how did you feel about that choice?
Yeah, I loved it. Creative recycling. I'm being silly, of course. That sounds terrible. The best use of whatever you're doing. How can we use this and revisit it in a new way?
Because there's something familiar about it, but it's also like, you're the same movie, but it's also like, the different orchestrations gives it different emotion. Those of you that have not seen Casablanca or are going to rewatch it sometime soon, look at the different ways in which they use As Time Goes By, that melody. They do something similar, and just very different orchestrations give it a different feel at times, you know. So now I'm going to talk about something both these guys have alluded to, because we always like to start positive. And so on the negative side is, I will admit, though it's generally considered to be the best Bond film, not just by me, but generally speaking, it's notable that the action scenes aren't that good. The fight in the beginning, the Aston Martin chase in the Alps, and the fight with Oddjob at the end are all okay, but not as memorable as the endings of those scenes, are more memorable than the actual scenes themselves. Also, the occasional use of fast motion, presumably done in post, doesn't work that well, especially in hindsight. But there's enough fun and intelligence going on in the rest of the film for this not to be a major detractor for me. Sounds like it was a major detractor for these guys. Patrick, you brought it up first.
The chop, and then you see the guy who chopped him later on the golf course. It's not like immediate, like, yo, you're the guy who I chopped. The action scenes weren't connecting. That was a little weird for me. I thought the chop was pretty whack, actually. I thought, like, leaving the body in gold was an interesting way of killing someone once you realize that that's how you can suffocate somebody.
And that's what I meant when I said the best executions early on. Like,
yes,
the actual killings, because even the death of Oddjob is kind of cool.
I also think, like you were saying, the scheme, I thought that was horrifying. I was like, oh my God, like this movie is going really hard. Mass murder, unknowing victims. That was terrible. But I didn't quite like the turn at the towards the end. So I'm like, oh, how did that even happen? What the hell is happening in this film? So the action was just a little weird and disjointed and strange.
Okay, and I will get to that as well. Max, action.
Yeah, it would be interesting to hear if all of the executions, as you call them, are in the book, or if they just sort of sat around and said, "What's the coolest way we could just decimate this person or annihilate, kill it?" Because they were really freaky. The gas that would kill everybody was disturbing enough, but then you have the dude getting electrocuted in the bathtub. I mean, the chop was pretty rough. You want to establish that he's sort of superhuman strong. I'll give them that, but it was pretty weak. The decision of like ways in which to kill everybody, that freaked me out, actually.
I can't say for sure about the other ones, but I can tell you that the woman dipped in gold is in the book.
You have no problem killing mob bosses from all across America. You just give him a chop.
Well, yeah.
And then you have your guy just murder him. He could literally have taken off his hat and sliced his head right there. But he doesn't. He leaves him alive to strike another day. And then, of course, there's a reason why he leaves him alive later. But there's a lot of times where it's like, just kill this dude, man. Like, what do you do? Why? Like, he just ran up in your base and drove his car all around, and you just take him captive. I don't understand. Just put a bullet in his head.
Put a bullet in his head.
Daniel Craig got to worry about shit like that. Like, like this Bond is like, I'll be fine. Give me a martini.
Well, I do want to talk about performances, and I think they're pretty good in this movie, mostly, and I'll explain why. Back in our 1966 in review, I named this actor as the best supporting actor of the year for his work in the film Is Paris Burning? And referring, of course, to German actor Gert Frobe, who here plays what I earlier declared was the best villain in Bond history. And AFI agrees with me, as Auric Goldfinger made their list of top 50 villains of all time, the only Bond film to make that list. A lot of what makes that possible is Frobe's performance. I think he plays it rather straight, with a little more playfulness than perhaps Robert Shaw from Russia with Love. He's intelligent, driven, ambitious, and eerily arrogant. It's as if Frobe didn't realize he was supposed to chew the scenery like many Bond villains have, and I think that's why he stands out as the best. It's my opinion, but I share that opinion with a lot of people. Max, you're the resident actor, fourth best actor in Los Angeles. How do you feel about Gert Frobe?
He was the best part of the film in terms of the acting, I think. He didn't need to chew the scenery, but with that accent...
It's his real speaking voice. He's actually German.
No, exactly. But I think he knew that was a tool in his toolkit in terms of chewing scenery. He could just kind of speak and be in his body, which was a little bit comical, if you will. I mean, he looked a little bit comical on the golf course and everything. There were certain things working for him that allowed him, I think, to just like, hey, I don't need to overdo anything. I thought that was great.
Yeah, smart choices, because a lot of people have not made that choice.
It's possible that the casting was as important as his acting.
He's still executing it though. I mean, like, another reason why I think Guy Hamilton needs some credit for directing this film. Patrick, Gert Frobe.
Yeah, he was kind of the precursor, I feel like, to the guy from Die Hard.
Very much so, actually. Yeah,
that kind of cool foreign guy that you want to know more about, but that is kind of scary. So I think he did great.
Hans Gruber actually was higher on AFI's list, villains of all time.
Hans Gruber had more to work with. He had a lot better monologues and writing. So but
well, as I said earlier, Goldfinger had the best line of dialogue in Bond history, which I will get to. Does Hans Gruber have more to work with? Probably, I guess. I would say Goldfinger has more, as a character, has more resources than Hans Gruber. Like, he's already rich.
Yes, definitely. They're both brilliant in their ways and both ruthless in their ways, but they're not maniacal, in their performance.
Yeah. There's not a lot of grandstanding or mustache twirling. I said earlier that Guy Hamilton mastered the tone that Terrence Young had been tinkering with in the first two films. And I think one of the key beneficiaries of that is Sean Connery, who also, likely, with the help of Hamilton, seems to have really figured out this character. He approaches Bond with more confidence in this film, confidence in his acting choices, both in terms of the jokes and the spy stuff, whereas previous films showed the slightest bit of caution, trepidation. By Goldfinger, he's hit a point where he could play the role in his sleep and still play it well, and it's a glorious thing to see. And Goldfinger is probably why me and most people feel that the late Sean Connery remains the best of the Bonds. Sounds like Patrick is going to go in the Daniel Craig camp there. I actually have never met anyone that disagreed. I have a feeling that I'm about to meet the first, if not the first and second. Max?
I've been tainted, I think, because I've heard some difficult stories about Connery as a person, but yeah, I thought he did a very good job. I don't actually think he's my favorite Bond, but I thought he was excellent in the part.
So it begs the question, who's your favorite Bond?
Well, that is going to be for another moment. I'll hold off on that.
Look at that. That'll be like a tease. Patrick, is Sean Connery the best Bond?
No.
So it's Daniel Craig for you?
No, it's gonna be Pierce Brosnan. I think Pierce.
Wow, no one's ever said that. That's amazing to me that you said that.
I don't think he got the action scenes that he deserved because he was just too handsome. You know, it's not his fault.
Are you suggesting Daniel Craig is not handsome?
No, Daniel Craig is not even close to as handsome as Pierce Brosnan. Wow. Not even close. It kind of made him a pretty boy Bond, but he was the archetype of what I would think a Bond would be, while still being able to drive a tank.
To me, he's not even second place. Maybe it's a rabbit hole. I think second place for me is the very underrated Timothy Dalton.
Wait a minute. I don't know who that is. Hold on.
He only made 2 films, License to Kill and The Living Daylights, and they were both good.
Come on, he was the 80s one, right?
It was 87 and 89. Then he was
out. I don't know.
Did you see the films?
Yes, I mean, I've seen them. I've seen every single one, except for really this one. I think Pierce Brosnan is the best, but Daniel Craig is close second for me.
You know, like everyone I've talked to is like, oh, it's Sean Connery. He's he's sort of the iconic figure when you think about it. He obviously has done the most films too, so he has the advantage of amount of time. One thing that Pierce Brosnan films are famous for, even though he only made 3, his death count is the highest amongst all.
He's killed so many people; it's out of control.
Pierce Brosnan also had the least good scripts he made 4 films.
It wasn't his fault.
All right, one more performance, and Honor Blackman herself is probably more famous for her character's name than her actual performance. I am not of the mind that she is among the best Bond girls, though admittedly she has a little more edge to her than most. She's a little tougher nut to crack for the notorious snake charmer that is James Bond. I'm not sure Blackman really navigated her character arc convincingly, but I'm not sure she was given the opportunity to. I think she was serviceable in the role, and her lack of depth or nuance didn't ruin the proceedings for me in any way. Max?
That whole relationship was really weird because she seemed so adamant about being against everyone, you know, so easily going against her boss and changing things. She certainly seemed happiest with her crew of female flyers and her flight attendant. When she sort of had that tussle with Bond and finally gave in, I just thought, oh, that's terrible.
Patrick, yeah. Honor Blackman.
I thought her character was great. It was great until it wasn't, where it was like, okay, this girl, she has her own motivations. And then it was her quote unquote maternal instincts that Bond changed. I was like, oh, problematic.
The inference there too is that she didn't realize that the gas was fatal.
Was that the inference that you got? I got that she called the U.S. government. She called the government.
Right, and that's why, because when Bond told her that the gas that they were delivering was fatal, she's like, oh, she made...
Oh, well, she implicated herself in a mass murder plot? But I got that...
No, but she switched the canisters, so she didn't do anything.
Yeah, but you don't go to jail now?
I mean, I think you don't. I don't know. You know, there's a lawyer upstairs. I can check with her. Because if you were unaware and you turned it in, I think...
There's a lot of ifs on that one.
Enough credibility for me to go with it. Maybe I'm giving them a break. It seems like your issues are character driven and not acting driven.
Yeah, no, it's script. It was a script problem, and she did just fine.
And that is a good segue for us to talk about the script. I mentioned earlier that the film has the best single line of dialogue in a Bond film, which of course is
Pussy Galore.
Actually, it's the best line of dialogue, famous line of dialogue from this film.
Do you expect me to talk? No, Bond. I expect you to bleep.
Why are we bleeping the word die? I don't understand.
Too much violence in this world.
So yes, no, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
Nah.
AFI again ranks at 3rd in the Bond series behind the introduction of his name, Bond, James Bond, as being one of the more famous lines in the series, and also shaken, not stirred.
It's the way he delivers it, though. It's just
great.
So effortless and so fun.
That brings us back to Gert Frobe's performance. But overall, in addition to that great line, there's lots of great lines, I think, throughout the film without us feeling bombarded by them. As I intimated earlier, Connery was better at delivering them than he was in previous films. Guys, do you have a favorite line in the film that's not Pussy Galore?
No, I just like he was on some slick pimp shit, you know, like some real dag. I get women all the time. I can say whatever I want to them. I like his swagger.
Max, do you have a favorite line?
I mean, there were some great lines. Q had some great stuff that obviously became iconic because
Right.
it was establishing the Aston Martin and bring them back in one piece, not like before.
I also liked he had a pressing engagement when he sees that the man was crushed in a car crusher thing.
How did he even know that was the car?
His Goldfinger said it.
Why did they bring the car back? That's like bringing the
They
evidence.
wanted the gold back. They put gold in there and then crushed it, and they wanted the gold back.
How many whys do I get? You killed him, just throw him out of the car and drive the car back home.
I know.
It was hardcore. I was like, oh, this is pretty badass. But then I sat and thought about it like,
Or just remove the gold before you crush the car. I don't know.
don't drive the car
That's
with
true.
the
He
gold in it.
He was shot before
Yeah.
the gold was crushed. That is an interesting point. That
Problematic.
that would have been the smart move.
I think they just wanted to show that like compactor on wheels. I did think that was amazing that those things, it's just like a truck that has this big compactor on the back.
Shot poorly in the sense it was very clear that there was no body in the car when it was being crushed. They showed too much of the car that it was clear that it was empty.
Yeah, I was hoping that when they picked it up, there'd be a little bit of blood dripping down. Like
It's funny for all the violence, they can't show blood. There's no blood in the whole movie. Did you see any blood?
No.
Yeah. Another thing that I liked about it, and Patrick sort of intimated this, is I like Goldfinger's plan. It's intricate, interesting, and appropriately nefarious. So often these things are about world domination, but the specificity of this, I think, adds to the appeal. It's in character for Goldfinger, and it's intelligent in its own awful way. And independent of all the people they were killing, but just the idea, instead of trying to dominate the world, he's trying to raise the price of gold, which increases his value. It is kind of brilliant in its own crazy way. Max?
This is an area where action movies haven't gotten better because what we've decided to do is go on this Mark Zuckerberg trajectory of like creating a universe that is outside the universe. And I definitely agree with you, JB. I really appreciated like, all right, this is a clear plan. It's not quite laughable. He's not trying to make $1,000. He's doing something that seems plausible on a certain level. I really appreciated the plot.
Goldfinger's plan had a major flaw in it that he didn't have to go. Bond didn't have to go.
Well,
What
that
are
was
you
the
even doing
way
there?
with Bond, making him radioactive. That was a grace note. That was a coup de grace kind of thing.
Just kill him. You don't need him anymore. And I kind of liked the ruthlessness of it. Some of the details.
This idea of him looking for something practical, because a lot of these Bond villains are about world domination. This is about something a little more specific, and so it feels a little more real to me.
Yeah,
I agree. I think there's tons of how did that have why is he all of a sudden still alive? And there were plenty of problems, I think, with the script, but the plot, in as much as it's just like A, B, C, I think is really very good.
In terms of the rest of the plot outside of Goldfinger's specific plan, things get a little murkier. Like, for example, the way that we get to Goldfinger. The whole idea of playing golf with him and all that stuff. I just question Bond's logic in the albeit fun scene where he interferes with his gambling. I don't know if I need it. If I'm tailing this guy, why am I making myself known to him in this adversarial way? I also could have done without the Masterson sister. Those are minor things, given how many things I could point out in so many other films in the franchise. Like, I think grading on a curve, I think this nets out a little better than most. There are definitely things where I had some questions, and you guys have already pointed out some other ones.
It's a Bond movie from the 60s that felt a little campy. I wasn't looking for an airtight plot, but there were some real problems. Just like the tracking, how things were kind of working with the two spies that were kind of following them, and he's got everything under control. He was obviously their captive.
It wasn't obvious to the spies, to the CIA guys. When they looked at them through binoculars, he was like walking freely with pussy galore.
What do they think was happening? That he was just
And
in on the
he was undercover and was infiltrating his operation. They didn't realize he was a captive. They thought he was like working his game. When you're undercover, you can't always check in.
Gotcha. But he had a tracking system on him, so why couldn't they have like a microphone or something? I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. They had all this technology, but he couldn't send a note.
Well, yeah. Well, he eventually did it his own way, but we're getting in the weeds a little bit. Max,
Yeah, no, I don't think it was a brilliant script, and certainly Patrick used the words airtight. I thought it was, Swiss cheese, but I think it could have been a lot worse.
Sort of what I meant as well. Yeah, especially
Yeah.
compared to the rest of the Bond films.
I really enjoyed when he cut into the guy's poker game. It also made no sense. It was like, wait, what are the repercussions of that?
If I'm Bond and I'm trying to infiltrate this guy's operation somehow, he just like immediately makes him an enemy in like a weird sort
Yeah,
of
you
way.
sleep with his girlfriend. Why not? Why
And
not?
not only that, I mean, like I think he still could have messed up the card game, but without making his presence known. And then killing the girl might have made more sense. Like if he didn't say, "Hi, I'm James Bond" or whatever, then that would get Goldfinger mad enough to kill the girl, but not be aware of who James Bond is.
Yeah.
All right, it's time for Max's favorite segment. What do we call it?
This is the big S, the big T.
It's the T word. This is where we talk about themes of a film, because the old days, Davey hated talking about themes. He thought it ruined the fun of the film. So whenever we had to talk about it, we danced around it and called it the T word, and it became a segment. So now we talk about themes all the time. Patrick's probably wondering, what the hell are we going to do for the T word for a James Bond film from this campy 60s? So obviously these films are light entertainment, and if it hits on any theme, it's often accidental. And so my first theme is potentially accidental. I'm calling it global economics. I feel like the film sort of makes me wonder about an economic system in which such loopholes are possible. Gold, for example, has value because of its rarity. And if someone makes it more rare, like Goldfinger is planning, it adds value to his own stock. But what truly is the real world value of gold? It's a metal like any other, and one could argue the value we assign to it is arbitrary. People want it for things because why? It looks pretty and it adds cachet, but those are societal concerns. If we opted as a society not to need or want gold, it would lose value regardless of how rare it is, and as a result, minimize the crime, scheming, and in some cases, casualties that go along with the pursuit of it. The same can be said of diamonds or any other so-called precious metal. Max, where are you on that?
I mean, I see what you're saying, and I think that's definitely an interesting theme to pull up from the depths. I would say,
not given as much to work with. This isn't Tony Erdmann here.
Well, true. It isn't. Maybe American and European colonialism and disposable women.
I'm going to get to the latter one, but tell me about the colonialism.
Well, mainly just because the bad people in the film outside of the German guy and the mafia dons are all Asian. We're experiencing the power players, all white men. I guess you have the aspect of where gold is mined. And then you have, the precious resources of the earth basically being controlled by, a bunch of American and European white guys.
It's interesting. I didn't make much of the Asian fighters because it seems like Goldfinger made a deal with an Asian doctor, and I don't know if there's something special about him being Asian to make the bomb, the specific bomb. The minions, that's where they came from. That was my theory, but I could be wrong about that.
To your point, it's even more strange because it isn't a specific Asian country.
So, Patrick, anything on global economy or colonialism?
No, I pulled on like the World War II kind of strings of like the Nazi gold and the Asian fighters and the British and the United States teaming up, since you guys were talking about it, but at no point was like that this was a theme.
There could be something to that in the sense that the Germans and the Asians, in this case, nondescript Asians, to Max's point, were teaming up as a leftover, residual almost.
Right.
Or maybe they were comfortable bad guys for an American audience and British audience because of residual World War II stuff.
Right, and even the Korean War too, them as the boogeymen. They kind of make sense.
So my other theme, guys, is something that seems both of these guys want to talk about a little bit. And this is not just about the film as much as the franchise itself. And that is its relationship with masculinity, and not necessarily in a good way. James Bond represents a lot of the perceived male ideal. He doesn't have superpowers in the traditional sense, but he has looks, intelligence, can kick ass and bed literally any woman that he wants. I'm not the first to discuss the potential bad messaging in the franchise, particularly those films before 1977, but it's worth mentioning again. When James is charming to most women and never misleads his conquest, he's not above being rough with them, and he doesn't always take no for an answer, which is something that has come up with both these guys, I believe. I don't know how many men actually think of themselves as James Bond, but it still sets a dangerous precedent. This idea that Bond is so confident that they really want him in spite of their words is not something that any other man should take to heart. Furthermore, the franchise perpetuates the myth of sex as a sport with a scorecard. While I do see the value to an early 60s audience to demystify and normalize sex to some degree, these early films take it a little too far. Just because every woman that Bond comes into contact with wants him doesn't mean that every woman wants you, or perhaps more accurate, wants sex as much as or often as the Bond girls do. The sexual revolution was supposed to be about giving women agency, choice over their bodies, as spearheaded by the invention of Enovid, or as we now call it, birth control. However, the example Bond often sets takes advantage of the newfound freedom of women and exploits it. So again, it's not a theme in the intentional sense, but it hangs over the film while looking at it through a modern prism. I've got the film's relationship with masculinity, Patrick.
Yeah, the film is problematic, man. But I mean, all films before 2017 are problematic. You know, if you watch them. So, as a man of his time, he was still, you know, a misogynist. You know, he was not a nice guy to some of these women.
Max,
You know, I think it's really interesting how overt this movie is in that regard. And I almost wonder, is it better that it's so in your face and it like doesn't try and hide the fact that he's such a misogynistic, you know, objectifier, or is it worse?
it's a fair point. Is the honesty of it, you know, more, is it because he's so direct about it?
His sort of ability to make out with this woman and use her as a human shield. There is something about that is not honest. It doesn't get to the heart of anything. And I totally understand that she knew the bad guy was there, and so therefore she was bad.
She had arranged for this whole thing to happen.
We didn't see that scene of arrangement, did we?
I mean, I think it's implied. In the spy world, if the woman double crosses him, he slaps her around. And in this case, you know, he used her as a shield. Certainly a smooth move that saved his butt.
That's sort of the problem, though, is your response, which is a good one, or at least as good as any other, is, oh, yeah, but it's been established since this other movie beforehand.
Oh, I'm not saying that's an excuse. The spy world, if he feels like a woman double crosses him, he basically treats her like he would a man that double crossed him.
But if the woman is trying to kill you, yes, you should be able to defend yourself with lethal force, I suppose.
Well, it's interesting, though, that I think that's one element of Bond that has not really evolved. I think the writing has gotten a little more complicated. I think he's had to show his sides of being attached to one particular person more than the whole population of Monaco or something.
He still beds down a lot of women. Like, I remember,
Right.
I think it was Monica Bellucci after her husband's funeral, and like beds her down like immediately after her husband's funeral. It was like bizarre.
Right.
Even for Bond, those qualities still exist, except the modern Bond is more violent, both in terms of Brosnan and Craig. And so what does that say about modern masculinity?
Our masculinity has now gone in a whole nother direction of like, there used to be strength in being by yourself. And now it's like, I'm so alone. I need people.
Well, the pandemic might have been a part of that, but also too, like over the years, you know, men were not allowed to be vulnerable. It was not cool. It was not considered manlike, you know, and so that has now evolved. The net result is now, are they too vulnerable where they can't function in a similar kind of a way? And I think that's what you're hinting at.
Right. But that is not what Bond is all about. Bond is about the strength of masculinity. I think Daniel Craig, he now, you know, you see him cry, you know, you see him with pain.
But with that pain, he goes off and kills people.
But at least it's not like I'll kill somebody and then crack a joke at their death. I'm sure he does that still. It's less so. Sean Connery, who's, you know, it's kind of serial killer like. He just like, you know, he got fried. Or, you know, it's like.
Oh, yeah.
So that brings us to the next segment, which is the classic movie showdown. This is where we pit two movies up against each other in NCAA-style brackets. We have all sorts of categories. We have movies of the 30s, movies of the 40s, movies of the 60s, movies of the 70s. We have Best Picture winners. We get the highest-grossing films of all time. All different sorts of brackets. Tonight will be the highest-grossing films bracket of all time, and I'll dig into that in a second. But before we do, we have Patrick here to explain the rules. Patrick, tell them how it works.
All right, the rules for the classic movie showdown, down. Seating criteria varies from bracket to bracket. That's the first rule. 2, films at JB hosted screenings need to be 15 years or older. 3, voters are eligible if they see both films within a 12-month period. 4, voters must see both films in JB's presence because he trusts no one. 5, JB is ineligible to vote, but breaks ties.
That should explain the rules to you. And so that's what happened. We had showed both these films at host screenings hosted by me, and with on the bracket of the highest grossing films of all time, adjusted for inflation. Meaning they do the math and you see for adjusting for inflation. And so it's not just all the big films from the modern time, but Gone with the Wind is the highest grossing film of all time when you adjust it for inflation. Whereas everyone thinks of Avengers Infinity War as the highest grossing film of all time, but technically not if you adjust it for inflation. And this makes it fairer because obviously the value of money changes over the years. Goldfinger is a number 11 seed in this highest grossing films bracket, which it puts it up against a 6 seed in the first round. And the bracket comes down to this. And again, the vote already happened in 2017. These guys don't know the winner, but the vote already happened. I will ask these guys to opine. But here is the matchup. Goldfinger versus Mary Poppins, which also, interestingly enough, came out in 1964. So these two films that came out in the same year match up against each other in this bracket. So Mary Poppins obviously grossed more, but they both grossed enough to make this list of the highest grossing films of all time adjusted for inflation. So I assume you guys have both seen Mary Poppins at some point in your life, if not recently.
Yep, I've seen it.
Okay, so I guess I have seen it, but it's been a very long time.
And Julie Andrews, she won an Oscar for Best Actress, actually. Max, I know it's been a long time, but from what you remember, what's your preference, Mary Poppins or Goldfinger, and why? Although
it may have been since 1964, since I've seen Mary Poppins, I would go with Mary Poppins.
Tell me why.
I love the story, and I love the acting, and I love the writing, and I love to sing. I don't know. Goldfinger was a special movie, but it doesn't stick out to me as, it doesn't stick out to me somehow. I think Mary Poppins pops more.
Mary Poppins doesn't seem like a Patrick movie, but let's see what he says. Patrick, Mary Poppins versus Goldfinger.
Mary Poppins is one of my favorite movies of all time. That, The Sound of Music, and Gladiator are top 3. Mary Poppins is far superior.
I just can't wrap my head around The Sound of Music and Mary Poppins and Gladiator. Like those three, that is such a random combination of 3.
Yes.
Which one of these things is not like the other?
Mary Poppins, iconic music, sets, dancing, why you go to cinema.
Okay, so these guys are both on the Mary Poppins. Let's see what the voters picked back in 2017. The winner it was Goldfinger. Kind of a surprise. The discussion of Mary Poppins with that same group was much more intense. But even though both films came out in the same year, the general impression was that Goldfinger felt more modern and engaging to them. Before I reveal who I would have picked, let's see reactions from these guys. The group picked against you guys. Patrick, what do you think?
2017 was a different time.
Max,
what were they thinking? Especially the logic that you raised where they felt like it was a more modern experience than Mary Poppins. I don't know.
I'm just repeating because I record as you know, Max, I record the talkbacks, so I re-listen to it. I was a little surprised.
Yeah.
But for me, and most of you audience members know that we reviewed Mary Poppins specifically in episode 40.3. That's 40.3. So we talked about it quite a bit. And for my money, I actually, as much as Patrick likes it, I still feel like Mary Poppins continues to be highly underrated. So I would have chosen Mary Poppins as well. As discussed in episode 40.3, in spite of its light tone and young target audience, it connects with so many adult themes like parenting, patriarchy, and socioeconomic issues. So for me, I would have picked Mary Poppins. That T word, for example, was a terrific T word.
One could say it actually has a theme.
Another reason to vote for Mary Poppins, but it didn't happen. Goldfinger moves on in this particular bracket. I do enjoy Goldfinger. It seems like more than these guys. It's time for closing thoughts. Max, you're first.
Well, I'm a fan. I mean, I had fun. My favorite James Bond, I'll share it now. Roger Moore, and that's totally sentimental. And just because when I was a kid, I was exposed to those James Bond movies, and immediately thought, "Wow, I want to be just like this guy." And I treated all the women in my life terribly. But,
he's evolved since then, ladies.
I mean, it is fun to see a movie from closer to the beginning of the James Bond series. As flawed and totally messed up as it is, I actually had a lot of fun.
Patrick, closing thoughts.
Closing thought is, I think the best part of the film is me watching Max with his gold finger. that makes
This show is the best part of having to watch Goldfinger. If only he did the extra level and like painted them gold somehow.
Yeah,
he missed it. He missed his calling as the Goldfinger. I liked it didn't take itself too seriously, and in that you could just have fun with the characters in the film. But in no way is this film better than Mary Poppins, and you need to check your friends.
Wow, all right, fair enough. Next up, Monday is our sound off. It's our 55th sound off. We're going to do an announcement about our finales, and we're going to recast some of the films from 1986 in review, including Quicksilver, which is the one that Max wanted to remake. And we're also going to count down our top 5 films that took place in Florida, and that's coming up on the next sound off. That's this upcoming Monday night. In the meantime, guys, let's say goodbye to the audience.
Bye, audience.
They're making gestures, audience. Anyway, they're making gestures with their fingers because of Goldfinger. And with that, this meeting of the No Name Cinema Society is adjourned.